Today, we're going to talk about the 10 standards you must have with men you like. And these 10 standards actually came out of a quick conversation that I had with a client that came in for a one-off session because she had a burning question. And I really want to share her story with you first because it's going to share with you the depth at which some of these standards come from and what comes up for you when you're dating somebody and how sometimes you can unknowingly be blind to some of the red flags, even if you are somebody that is constantly looking for red flags. So this client, let's call her Mimi. She came to me and she said, I've been dating this guy for 2 months. The sex is amazing. We have a great connection, but I got to a place where I could kind of see a future with this person, and I wasn't quite sure where we stood. So 2 weeks ago, I asked him, what is our relationship status? So, she revealed that she could see a longer-term relationship with him, and she was wondering where he stood. And he immediately got angry with her and was just like, I can't believe you're asking me this question. Of course, I see something long-term with you. You should have known that all along. That's how I've been relating to you. And from that conversation, he started to pull away and has stopped communicating. So of course, for Mimi, a lot of self-doubt has come up and was just like, she was questioning if she did something wrong. Did she bring this topic up too fast, too soon? Was she being dramatic in some way by bringing it up? That she should have just known that he had these intentions all along. And this is a woman that is really successful, right? She's somebody that out in the world has big teams. She owns her own business. She's amazing and accomplished. And yet with her love life, something happens where she can't quite really read what is happening on the other side with a man. And in this case, rightfully so, which is what I'm about to get into. So this is what he did. She questioned herself, and then she wanted to ask me. She's like, did I do something wrong, or was that an appropriate thing for me to ask? And I said, absolutely. But something stuck out for me, which was her saying that she could see a future with him. Also, her saying that they have a lot of sex and the sex is really good, which is awesome. I want that for everybody. But it sounded like the relationship was revolving around sex a little bit. So those two things struck me. So I asked her a deeper question. I said, what has you feeling like you could see a future with this person? And she said, there are, I think, two things that she located. One being that she's like, he feels very loyal. He seems like a one-woman kind of guy. When he decides to be with somebody, he doesn't look around. He doesn't cheat. It feels like he's very dedicated. And I said, okay, great. What else? And she said, he also seems like very protective. He would fight for us or fight for me. And that feels really good too. So I was like, okay. But when she said those two things, I could really see there were things that she was missing. So I said, what was it like at the beginning of the relationship? Was he asking you out? Did you go out on dates? What was that like? So she said, yeah, we've been out like on a coffee date. That was our first date. Then we went out to dinner. We've been to concerts together. But after every single one of those dates, we would definitely go back to his place and have sex because the sex was so amazing. And she said, but what I did notice is that he wouldn't ask me a lot of questions. He wasn't that interested in me. It felt like he barely even really knew me. And I was asking him a lot of questions and wondering what his life is like in his past. And I felt like I knew him, but it didn't feel like he really knew me. Another thing that I would sense is his level of presence. Like I would come over afterwards, or I'd meet up with him at his place before we would go out, and his TV would be on, and he wasn't very present with me many a times. And so I just felt like, is this just sexual for him, or is he really into me? And so rightfully so that she was questioning all these things, right? It makes sense that she was wondering. And so what this brought up for me is I knew there was something deeper going on because she was ignoring all of these other things, and yet her body was feeling it, her intuition was feeling it, hence why she asked this question about relationship status. But she wasn't really acknowledging all of those things as much as the loyalty factor and feeling protected. So I said, are those two things that your dad had? Because I could sense that there was a connection between her and her dad in this situation. And it's not always true that when you're relating to men, that whatever's coming up for you has everything to do with your dad. in your childhood with your dad. Your mom absolutely plays a role in this. Step parents do, siblings do, grandparents do, those that raised you do. So I just want to say that because some people think that there's a deep connection between dad and men when you're dating, and that is not the total truth. So I asked her, was your dad very loyal? And she said yes. And this client was Asian. And she said, yes, he was extremely loyal. And what I would see around me is a lot of men were cheating, having affairs, having mistresses. And I just really, really admired how my dad was so loyal to my mom. And I said, okay, and did you feel protected by your dad? And she said, no, not really. He was a very peaceful person. If there were like other family members that were talking badly about our family, he would try to take kind of the harmonious route or try to push it aside and take the high road. And so it fell on my mom to actually fight for us, to stand up for us. And it really drained my mom in the relationship. And I witnessed that. And I remember thinking, I never want that situation. I want to feel like the person I'm with is going to protect me. So I'm telling you this because this is where the blind spots actually come in. Until you go to this deeper level, you can't actually see what you can't see, which is crazy, right? So you can kind of connect the dots like I did as I'm telling you this story, which is she zeroed in on these two things because they were the things that she loved about her dad and the thing that she vowed she never wanted in terms of a dynamic that she saw between her parents in her own relationship. And we all have these pieces. So what you get to ask yourself is, what is it that I disliked or I resist in my parents' relationship? Because those are the things that you're zeroing in on that makes it feel safe and stable, but you're missing all of the other red flags that are coming up. So what is it that you resisted in their relationship? And what is it that you admired about your dad or your mom that you want in partnership that is also having you zero in on that and ignore the red flags because that felt safe and stable? All right. So I wanted to share this story with you first. It gives you the depth that is necessary when you're really evaluating somebody that you are dating right now from the beginning to the end. But now I want to get into the 10 standards that will really help you pinpoint some of these red flags along the way. All right. So let's get into it. These standards 1 to 10 are not in order of priority. Standard number 1 to 10 are given to you not in the level of importance from like 1 to 10. 10 is just as important as number 1. So know that all of these standards are equally important. All right. So standard number 1. Standard number 1 is that he asks you questions and that he's genuinely interested in you. If you feel like it's a one-way street, a lot of the times where you're asking questions and you're getting to know him, but there's not a lot of thoughtfulness in his questions of what he's wondering about in you and how you live and how you function, and what are your opinions and thoughts about things, that is something you want to look out for. The standard that I want you to have is that he's asking you lots of questions, thoughtful questions, that you can feel his interest in you. That is standard number 1. Standard number 2. That he makes you a priority. So this can happen in small or big ways, but I want you to notice all of them because depending on if you're at the beginning of a relationship or the middle or it's been years, it all varies. But the way that he makes you a priority is noticing smaller things like, does he ask you if you have a preference about foods before he books a restaurant? Like, do you like Chinese or Mexican, And that there's a thoughtfulness that makes you a priority, that he's thinking about you. Or he opens doors or pulls out your chair, right? Those are more chivalrous things to do, which is showing you that he makes you a priority. And there are bigger things like, does he include you in his life? If there are children involved, has he introduced you to the children as the relationship has gotten serious? Does he make plans with you? Do you guys stay more in communication than not? Those are all signs of making you a priority. So that is standard number 2, that he makes you a priority. Standard number 3, that there is a flow of communication happening so that when you're out and about, you're having, first of all, if you're talking in between dates, that there's hours that go by and it just seems easy, right? Secondly, when you're on dates, there can be silence. That's normal. There can be moments of awkwardness or a little bit of angst or somebody's trying to think about what the other person just said. But when a topic comes back up, there's an ease that somebody else just adds their opinion, the other person adds their opinion. You come up with another kind of subject that adds to it, just like you're talking to a friend, right? There's just a flow and ease in the communication. That is standard number 3, because that shows your compatibility. There's a way that you guys are connecting on an energetic level that there is ease and compatibility. So that is number 3. Number 4, when you open up about your feelings, it feels like he comforts you in that. So it could be something as you're celebrating something in your life that day, that maybe at work you got a promotion, or a team member took your advice and now they're making a breakthrough in their work, right? That you're celebrating something and the person you're dating meets you with, that's amazing. Like this level of excitement and celebrating of you in that, right? That feels nurturing and that feels soothing and that feels like he's comforting you in that way, right? That he's matching your emotion. Right? So that is standard number 4, that whenever you are feeling something, that you feel comforted in it. Standard number 5. So standard number 5 is when you are feeling down. Maybe you lost somebody in your life. You're going through waves of grief, that you're sad, deeply sad about something, that it feels like he uplifts you. Right? That there's an upliftment that happens. And so sometimes what occurs in these moments is that, let's say, and we're going to talk about love languages for a second. So love languages are the ways that you receive love. Like, so if you're somebody that has a love language of touch, if somebody hugs you, that really feels like loving to you. But if you're somebody that has a love language of quality time, somebody's presence with you really feels nurturing and good and loving versus a hug, right? So there are these different love languages, which I absolutely believe everybody's every one of them, but we do have some that are stronger than others. So let's say that you're sharing something and you felt some loss and you really want to hug, but you don't ask for it and you don't know to ask for it, but he's interested and he's asking you questions and he's wondering how it feels for you there, and you feel uplifted by it, that you feel taken care of in some way. That is a good sign. Now you could take it a level further where if you ask for a hug, he's readily like leaning in and giving you a hug, and that feels really uplifting. Awesome. That's all good. And sometimes there are little blips in this. It's not going to be seamless. So I really want to emphasize that. But when you're sad and down, that it feels like there's a genuine upliftment that you feel by his interaction with you. That is number 5. Standard number 6. Standard number 6 is when you bring up vulnerable conversations, he's game. He's ready. He is like, let's talk about this. So for example, with this client, Mimi, when she brought up the relationship status, an amazing way for him to react would be like, yeah, I totally get why you'd bring this up. I understand. Let's talk about it because I would like to get on the same page. That is you getting vulnerable and him meeting you in that vulnerability by being like, let's talk about it. Let's conversate, right? Or if you get vulnerable about something that's happened with your parents or a friend where you feel like you did something you didn't mean to do, or you get into a fight, you have your first argument and you're starting to talk about that vulnerably, and he opens up vulnerably too, where he's like, gosh, I felt badly about this too, and I didn't tell you at the time, but this is what I wish I would have said. Those are good signs. So that is standard number 6, that when you get vulnerable, he also meets you in that. Standard number 7. Standard number 7 is that he's not looking around while you guys are out and about, looking at other women or his phone constantly, or staring out into space and not really engaging, but that you feel his level of presence. That is standard number 7, that you feel his presence with you. And it might be that he checks his phone, but that you were in the middle of a conversation and he has this work thing that comes up. And so he's like, just hold on one second. I know we're in the middle of this conversation. I just got to handle this one thing. He goes and handles it. He comes back. He remembers the last thing you said. And he said, hey, this was the last thing you said. Let's pick up there. Let's talk about it. Right? And he's right back engaged with you. So you're never going to have 100% level of presence, but you can feel that he puts his phone down, that he's with you, and that he really wants to know you, right? So that there's this level of presence and attention on you, and his attention isn't everywhere else. That is standard number 7. Standard number 8. You are pacing with one another. That is standard number 8, where when you like him, you can feel he likes you. When you say, I love you, that you're met with an I love you back. Or if he says, I love you, you're like, oh my God, I feel that too. I love you too. Now, sometimes there's a little gap in this, so it doesn't have to be like exactly at the same time. Sometimes it could be that you say it first because you just feel it and it came out, and there's a little bit of apprehension on his part, so maybe he doesn't say it right away, but he says it a couple of days later or a week later. But it's about like around the same time where you are on the same page at the same time. This is also another marker of compatibility. All right. So being in flow with one another where it's just easy. You know he likes you. You know you like him. You know you're falling for him. You know he's falling for you. There's no questioning. There's no anxiety around where you stand with this person. Standard number 9 is that he's not putting you on a pedestal and making himself inferior. So if you're getting like comments like, oh, you've got your life so together and I'm just trying to figure myself out. Or you seem like you know exactly what to do in these situations, or you're perfect and I feel like I'm a mess here in these places. If you're getting feedback like that from him or comments like that, it just will blow up later on down the line where he consistently puts himself lower than you. And meanwhile, you're sitting here like, I'm not perfect. I'm not this person that you think that I am. Like, I've got all these vulnerabilities. And so it's also a sign that maybe you're not getting that vulnerable with him, that you're playing this I need to be perfect role with him. So that could be a sign of that. But if you are getting some of this while also being vulnerable and sharing your imperfections, it's a sign that he thinks of himself less than you, and you want somebody that is relating to you as equals. You want to be related to as equals. What I mean by being equals is not necessarily that your external circumstances make you equals, meaning that you guys make the same money, that you have the same levels of success, that you have the same kinds of families, that you're just as close to them, right? That's not what I mean by two equals coming together. You could absolutely have him making less than you making more than him making more than you making less than him. Maybe he comes from a family that isn't that close. Maybe you come from a family that is close. It doesn't matter. Those external circumstances do not make you equals. The way you energetically relate to one another make you equals. And that's what I want for you, is that you're interacting with one another as equals. That is standard number 9. Last but not least, standard number 10 is that you are highly attracted to him. I want there to be chemistry and compatibility. I don't want there to be one or the other. That would be settling. Both things need to exist, okay? And so chemistry is really powerful because it's not of the mind. It's literally a bodily response. It's literally a bodily response that you're having to a person that transcends the mind. And you need that level of attraction to really keep that relationship hot and juicy over time. And if that is not there, that has to be acknowledged. It's not something that typically grows over time, to be honest with you. It's something that just innately comes out of your body from like this animalistic space. And that is a good thing. I want you to be highly attracted to your person. Okay, so that is standard number 10. Those are all 10 standards. And like I said, not one is more important than the other. Write them down, create a checklist if you need to. Those are the 10 standards that you really want to keep in mind to know if somebody's right for you and if you are engaging with what I call soul level love. If you want more videos like this from me, subscribe to my channel. The subscribe button is right underneath this video. And you want to hit that little bell button because you'll get notifications from me. I send out videos on Thursdays and Sundays every single week, so you'll be notified of that. So check it out now. And I'm so excited to see you in the next video.